So let's get things started. First up, we welcome Phil Kewin, the Chief Executive Officer of the AFA. Phil has been an AFA member for over 10 years and has over 30 years' experience in financial services, including a number of senior executive roles, as well as having run his own advice practice. Phil is passionate about the value of advice and the great outcomes achieved as a result of good advice. To welcome you and give a strategic update on the AFA vision, please welcome Phil Kewin.
Love that music. Thank you, Karen. And good morning, everyone, and good morning those of you live streaming as well. So how exciting is this? And just a reminder, live streaming, you can participate in the live polling. So look, thanks so much for coming along this morning. It's great to see so many of you here. It's great to see you taking an interest in what's going on in the industry at the moment, because there is a lot going on. And I'd like to say a particular thank you to all of our partners. Without our partners, we wouldn't be able to put these events on. You can see the names on the tables. They're out the back, so please feel free to talk to them. And once again, thank you to our partners. Now, we've just passed the halfway point of this year, and I've been in this role for just over 15 months. And it seems that, we might get a sort of one change in legislation or one change in regulation. We might get one inquiry. But we seem to have got all of that just in the last 7 months. And we even got a Royal Commission that we didn't expect. So we really seem to have found the perfect storm of everything that could possibly happen in this industry. Now, we knew when we started the year, education standards was going to be an issue. We know we're on a pathway, and I know that everyone in this room is committed to professionalism. And from an AFA perspective, we're committed to the fact that we want to ensure that we retain the rich experience that exists, not only in this room, but in the whole profession. But not only that, we need to provide a career path for new advisors and for people wanting to enter the industry. So we're going to continue to advocate, and Phil Anderson's going to talk a bit more about the education standards, because we want to make sure that we get pragmatic solutions that ensure that ultimately, because let's face it, all of this is in the public interest. It's in the public interest if we grow the number of advisors. Our challenge is to make sure that we increase the number of advisors who can actually give advice. I mean, our objective is to provide great advice to more Australians, and unless we increase the number of advisors, that's not going to happen. Now, the Code of Ethics, we've seen a draft. Hopefully you've read our paper on this, our recommendations. There's some good stuff in there. We've just asked some questions around what the code means and how you can actually measure the code. But a lot of people don't realise that the Code of Ethics, the FASEA Code of Ethics, as highlighted in the Royal Commission, is going to change things dramatically. So we're going to have a situation where every single one of you is a member of a code scheme and a code monitoring body. And that monitoring body, whether it's the AFA or a larger single body, will be responsible for monitoring you and disciplining you in terms of the Code of Ethics. So this changes the relationship dramatically. And this is going to be really important. So we need to make sure that we work through to provide an appropriate code monitoring and code scheme that's relevant to all advisors. Now, the Royal Commission, we all said we didn't need a Royal Commission, but we saw 2 weeks of wealth management and advice, and we saw things that we didn't like. We know that the terms of reference for the Royal Commission was around looking at those systemic cultural issues at an institutional level. And we saw a lot of that, many examples. But what we also saw is examples of poor or bad advice. Now, admittedly, in terms of 25,000 registered advisors in Australia, the handful of examples that we saw you could consider is not representative. And we know it's not representative of advisors. We know that your clients were saying, this is not you, this is not what we've expected. But we also know that one example of bad advice is one example too many, because that's what the media sees, that's what the 80% of people who don't seek advice see. That's why it's so important that we try and increase that number of people getting advice. We've stayed at or below 20% of Australians seeking advice for far too long. Now, we've already seen some fallout from the Royal Commission. We've seen what's happened with Dover, for example. Now, I don't care what you think of the Dover model or management, but what I do know is that we should never have a situation where we have over 400 advisors, over 160 practices, their staff in a situation where they don't know what their future is. the thousands of clients that couldn't seek advice at a critical time of the year. We can never allow this to happen again. And that's why we need to make sure that when we make our submissions, we want your feedback. We conducted some feedback sessions recently and asked members to come along in most of the major cities. I have to say that the participation rate was underwhelming. One of the things that has been really emphasised to me is make sure that you're representing the members. So to represent the members, we need to get your feedback. So can I just really implore upon you, if we ask you for feedback or if we recommend that you make your own submission, because FASEA is open to recommendations from everyone, that you play your role as well, because this is so important. This is the future. This is your future. This is the future of our profession that we're dealing with here. Now, I talked about ASIC. Most of what we saw at the Royal Commission, ASIC was either dealing with or had remediated. Very few things that came up in the Royal Commission were actually surprises. But we want to continue to work with ASIC so that we don't have these protracted issues that do end up creating issues that affect all of us. And that's something that's going to be ongoing. Talked about parliamentary inquiries, there's been a number of them. Some of them have some interesting results. All of them, in some way, shape or form, will impact our industry and regulations, legislation potentially, the way we do business. And so we need to continue to play an advocacy role there. And there's been some recent budget proposals. Some of them, Andrew Lowe will talk about, that are good opportunities. Some of them just don't make sense. I mean, in terms of insurance and superannuation for younger people, removing a safety net of insurance for thousands of Australians just doesn't make sense. And then potentially making it more expensive for those who do have insurance is not in the public interest. This is not an advice issue. In fact, this actually increases the need for advice because less people will be covered. But it needs to be in the public interest as well. So a lot of advisors said to me, why they're picking on us? I mean, some of you may have seen a Four Corners program recently where they talked about an expose and kickbacks and payments, and your best interest was the best interest of the person making the recommendation. So what that proves is you can take any industry and have a Royal Commission, and you're going to find bad examples. But it does just feel, at the moment, that we're the industry that seems to be picked on. But I don't want to paint a picture of doom and gloom, because that's why we're here today. The one thing that we can do is continue to get together in forums like this and share best practice. You know, we'll be talking about improving efficiencies, Matt Heiner, and removing friction in your business. We'll be talking about reducing costs, because we know it's becoming more and more expensive to deliver advice to Australians, which means that potentially some will miss out. So we'll talk about reducing costs, improving customer intimacy. Eleanor Dartnell's done some great work around customer intimacy, and she might debunk some of the thoughts that you have about what your clients think about the process by which you engage with them and the information, the material that you provide them. Providing relevant solutions is ongoing. We're going to hear some great solutions. Andrew Lowe and Ravi Agarwal as well will present to us his model at a successful business. And on that, I just want to say a special thank you. This has been 2 weeks of AFA Roadshow. Eleanor Dartnell and Ravi Agarwal are practitioners just like you. They're running their own business. Time is money. They've given up the last 2 weeks just to share with you what they do. They're not telling you that they do something better, but they just wanted to share with you, not to mention the preparation time. And I really just want to take this opportunity to thank both Ravi and Eleanor for their contribution and the effort they've put in. So thank you, guys. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. So the important thing is we need to remain up to date. Now, I often get asked, shouldn't we collaborate more with other associations? And I can assure you, we get together with the FPA regularly. We see, are there times where we share a view? If so, let's go in as a united front. If not, it's good to have a diversity of thought. This is just one example, the Alliance for a Fair Retirement System, where it's primarily driven by the SMSF Association, but the AFA and a number of other associations are part of this, consumer associations. This is to fight against the proposals from Bill Shorten to remove the franking credit cash refunds. This is not aimed at the rich. This is aimed at affecting mum and dad investors, be they self-managed super funds or direct investors. And so this is just one way. The Alliance for a Fair Retirement System, we're getting together to pool our resources to make sure we fight against this. I've talked about all of this being in the customer interest. Now, if you are an AFA member and you haven't looked at the Your Best Interest YBI Content Hub recently, can I just ask you to do so, please? We have refreshed this content rapidly. There's over 30 contributors. They're professionals. They're your peers. Anyone in this room, you can contribute to it. We also have professional contributors. Why is this important? Because if we're talking about the public, this is when they're looking for information, they may well land on the YBI Content Hub. They're getting information. When they start to look at protection or saving for retirement or self-managed super funds, they're going to be looking at this information. Why again is that important? Because then they might realise they need advice. So they'll then say, I need to find an advisor. They'll go into the AFA Find an Advisor portal. If you haven't updated your profile, because every single member is in Find My Advisor, if you haven't updated your profile, all they'll see is your name and an egg. Don't let them see an egg. Let them see you. Let them see what you provide them, the type of customer that you're looking for, the type of customer you can help, and what solutions you can provide them. Very quickly, AFA in the community, we'll talk about the AFA Foundation, do a number of ventures. We're doing Kokoda again this year. There's 10 of us doing the Kokoda track next month, raising funds for different charities. My charities are Legacy for Families of Return Services and the Black Dog Institute to help against mental health. There's an Everyday Heroes website, $10, $20. You can donate for me or any of the other 10 trekkers. And that leads me on to AFA Care. Some of you may be familiar with it. There are cards on your table. AFA Care is very important. There are some great opportunities ahead, and you'll hear that from Ravi and Eleanor and some of the other speakers. But I know there are challenges as well. There are significant challenges, and I can tell in talking to people, some people are wondering, what their future is and worrying about their future. AFA Care is there for you. This is your counselling service. There's a phone support line. Benestar, there's a content hub. It's the largest provider employee assistance program in Australia. This is for you, your staff, your families in times of need. And guys, particularly, I'm talking to you. I know sometimes we don't share it with each other. It's confidential. This is someone you can actually talk to. So I talked about navigating the perfect storm. There are significant opportunities out there, but we know there are challenges. The next time we get together like this will be the AFA conference, and that's the important thing to do. Don't just hide in the corner in the room. Come together as part of the community. We're going to continue to advocate and influence, and you'll see that. Hopefully you've seen that from a lot of our emails and submissions, but you'll see that more from what Phil Anderson shares with you. We're going to continue to assist and guide you through the education pathways to get the right outcome to make sure as many people stay in the industry as possible. I talked about a code scheme, code monitoring body. We'll work together to make sure that we have an appropriate solution that suits you. We've got to learn from each other, learn from our partners. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. There is some great stuff out there. Look on everyone's website, the partners' websites. You'll see some amazing stuff. But the last thing is about belief. No matter what challenges beset us, the one thing that I've seen all the great advisors continue to succeed is that's because we have this belief in advice. We believe in the value of advice. And I firmly believe if we continue to follow that belief, we will continue to have a strong and prosperous industry. On that note, I'll hand you back to Karen and enjoy the rest of the day. See you at the conference.